Hey Gearfax friends, today I'm looking at the Synthstation 25 from Akai. It was a bit of a moderately unsuccessful project for them where the basic MIDI keyboard would use an iPod, the old 30-pin kind, to be the brains of the show basically. The theory was great, but it's just a little bit bugged. Anyway, let's have a listen to some sounds and we'll talk about it more after that. Okay, so that gives you a bit of a vibe of how this synth generally sounds. Let's take a closer look at the software. What you just saw there was performance mode, which is our general overview. You can go to sounds mode as well, which gives you the full grid of all the sounds that you can choose from. We have synth 1, synth 2, synth 3, and also there are drums. Back to the main menu, mixer. This controls our sends to the effects unit and the general volume of each of the synth sounds and drums. XY pad is pretty interesting. You can set 2 parameters of any sound and just put them in motion by doing that. Or you can go nice and slow, so you can have a sound kind of evolving. Okay, so it looks like this sound is a pretty good example. We've got volume going left to right. I'm not sure what parameters going on the y-axis. Let's speed it up a bit. So yeah, that gives you a pretty good idea how that one works. It's a very useful tool. Actually, editing sounds is really in depth. You've got 12 different blocks here. So in filter, for example, I'll just play the sound and tweak some of these. Go back and try a different one, like the oscillator. So that's how quick it is to make significant changes to the sound. Grid edit is where you can create a song in the usual grid editing kind of fashion. Tap for a short note, swipe for a long note, and play that. Okay, so I've just put a bit of a random synth line there on top of a preset drum loop. Tap tempo is obvious. Drum kit, this works a bit like the traditional Akai sampler. And we have heaps of kits to choose from. Look at that list. Lots of them, and there are plenty of really exciting and quite interesting ones. And you can control them from the keyboard just by switching to the drums button here. Just a quick look at the drum edit page where you can change the pitch and the loudness of each of the drums. And effects is last. The effects are good. Just 4 of them, phaser, flanger, chorus and delay, but the quality is excellent. And more importantly, the malleability of these effects is really quite intense too. So I switched this main sound that we're using over to phaser now. So that's what phaser can do. Flanger runs along similar parameters. Then we have chorus, which is stronger than you might expect. So rather than just being a sound thickener, chorus can be really quite expressive, and of course delay, which works really well with arpeggiated sounds like this one. Got a bit of distortion there because of too much feedback, but you get the idea. The expression controls are just beautiful. They feel right, they've got a nice tactile rubbery surface, and they're just great to use. So why isn't this instrument absolutely awesome? Well, it's a little bit bugged basically. The software has a tendency to crash, and even though it has great options for sequencing out entire songs, 32 songs in fact, each made up of any of 32 sequences that you can put together yourself, so the scope for music production is massive, but when something crashes halfway through a project and you lose everything you've saved, it's immediately rendered unusable basically. So this machine is really only good for making a sound, sampling it to something else, or recording it quickly and then going ahead and using it on that other equipment. So think of it as a sound generator, pretty much forget about the songs and sequencing part of it. The other problem I've been finding is radical changes in volume. Sometimes it'll just stack on an extra 10 decibels just for a moment with no warning at all and no apparent reason. The battery's fine, we're getting power from the mains here, the connections are all fine, and yet sometimes the volume will leap around unexpectedly, so that again creates big problems for recording and is just an occasional but very real annoyance. And that's a tragic shame because everything else about the Synthstation 25 feels really good and it's all great on paper. The manual does say that it should work with all apps that are creating music because it runs on some kind of technical standard that all apps should understand. I've only found it to work on the actual Akai app, so that part of the wish list didn't quite come true either. But anyway, having said all of that, these are getting very cheap now and the synth is brilliant fun to play around with, and I'm talking about the actual edit section. That one is great if you're learning about synthesis, and if you pick up one of these cheaply, I've got no doubt you're going to get at least 1 or 2 really fun days out of it and some great samples to use in your compositions. That's assuming you have a sampler, which pretty much we all do these days, I guess. Anyway, that's all I want to say about the Synthstation 25. It's definitely got a little place in history because it was a really good idea. but ultimately not a terribly usable one. More of a toy, really, I guess. Anyway, here are links to some other things that might be of interest to you. I did actually review this one and its bigger brother, the Synthstation 49, some years ago. The 49 was a lot more impressive, so I'll put a link up to that. Anyway, don't forget to like or subscribe and leave a comment too, because I'm always up for talking about these kinds of things. And thanks for watching Gear Facts. That's the Akai Synthstation 25.